What up, bros? What up, bros? I don't like how you could be that loud, but I can't be that loud. Anyway, this is Bruh Meets World. But it's Bruh Meets World. Your Boy Meets World fancast. I am Siege.
I'm Tony Curtis. How are you, sir?
Timothy, how's it going?
It's going well. You know, we're getting into a very meaty part of the series. I'm really excited. We have some guests on today I'm very excited to talk to. So I'm doing great.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to talk this episode for not only our guests, which we will introduce in just a second, but specifically I feel like we are just at a point in time when they really are trying to be heavy with their storytelling, but they also don't want to let go of being like this TGIF fun sitcom. So we're getting some really interesting things at this point in time.
As they try to merge the comedy and the drama. Yeah, sometimes they hit, sometimes they miss.
Absolutely. But speaking of hits or miss,
that's a weird way to
introduce. You didn't know where I was going with this. Give me a moment.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, TC, when
Yes.
was the last time? Do you remember the last movie that you actually rented, like VHS style or like from a Blockbuster?
VHS, like in-person rental?
Yeah, when was the last time you did an in-person rental? Don't even remember the last one.
I did just rent Mrs. Doubtfire off of iTunes like yesterday. But other than that, nothing.
That's a really I'm just trying to think of the last one that I bought, and I think it was like a Final Destination.
Incredible.
Like
I hope it. Yeah, please not the first one. Anything but the first.
Well,
one.
I love the first one, but
no, the first one's the best. The rest of them are just so bad that they're good. That's why I love them.
Absolutely. All right. Anyway, that whole segue, which was very clunkily put together, was to introduce our guests. You will know them from the No More Late Fees podcast. Welcome, Jackie and Danielle.
Hey.
Hello. Hi.
Thank you guys for dealing with our clunky exposition.
Oh, no worries.
Loved
Isn't
it.
that really sad that you have to think about the last thing you rented or bought from Blockbuster?
Gosh, it was such a joy on a Friday night to go to a Blockbuster. You stop and pick up some pizza on the way home. You're set. You're set for the weekend.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I used to do Albertsons. Albertsons had that video rental
99
spot.
cents.
Thank you. I'm doing Albertsons of the library. We saving money up in here.
Honestly, that was the way. My mom got so mad because she had late fees and she was pissed that she had to pay them. So she made a big stink. She cut up her card and everything. It wasn't until I started working at Blockbuster that we reignited going to Blockbuster again, because I got 5 free rentals.
You got that hookup.
Yeah.
I love that there's a legitimate backstory to the name of your podcast. It's like, my mother had enough.
Well, Jackie and I met in high school, and then Jackie started working at Blockbuster first, and then
Amazing.
I got a job at another Blockbuster, and then we ended up being able to work at the same one. So she was my boss. God help her, poor thing. I got some complaints because I was sassy, but never fired. So that's always
sassy
good.
is just code for black.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not having it today.
I just got in the habit of my district manager's number is up there. Just leave
There
me
you go.
out of it.
Have it on. Have it ready.
Can we ask, what is your history with Boy Meets World? You guys definitely, your podcast talks about kind of nostalgia and 90s things. Did you watch it at the time? Did you watch it in reruns? What impact did it have on you? What's your story?
We loved it. I mean, we were diehard TGIFers ourselves.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
Boy Meets World. Both of us very much watched all of it. I even watched Girl Meets World as well.
Oh, wow.
I love
More
people
than me.
who've actually done that. Yeah, absolutely. Who's your favorite characters from Boy Meets World?
Y'all already know
Stupid
who
Eric.
mine is.
Who's yours? I'm actually interested.
Angela.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Well, so here's the thing. I was we also have Turned On by Turner, and we get that a lot from other people.
Mhm.
So I wasn't, but Angela, absolutely, that representation.
Jackie, what was yours?
Stupid Eric.
Stupid
Eric.
I
Interesting.
delineate, like, I don't like when Eric is normal. Like, as soon as
Really?
he becomes dumb, I'm in.
You love a
100%.
himbo.
Oh, I love a himbo.
That's amazing. You know, we've been talking about Eric's transition a lot because we're in season 6 now and it's becoming more and more apparent. And it's
Yeah.
always interesting to hear people's takes on Eric, but you're just like, hey, I'm here for the silliness. You're into
I
it.
am.
Awesome.
Like the first season where he's like a normal older brother, I'm like, can we fast forward this? Like, let's get to dumb Eric, please.
Eric's also like, well, Will Friedle's comedy and like
Yes.
his like just the way he puts his entire body into the character is so fun to watch. And I feel like even like in this episode that we're about to cover, Eric was some of my favorite parts about it. I was just like,
Yes.
Eric is really like, he brings a lightness and a joy to the series that I don't know if the show would have been the same without him.
I
100%.
agree. Yeah, and I think it could have been very cringy depending on the actor playing Eric, but like
Yeah.
you said, he just does it with such great timing and that little twinkle in his eye. I just love it. It's
You
perfect.
can really tell how much of the character is Will Friedle based off of how they originally wrote him. And then as they started writing him, as they started to learn his strengths, like he really brought Eric and made him the character that we all know and love.
100% agree. I think I really feel like the transition of why he changed from being smart to silly is because I think the producers and writers just got to know his personality, and it just makes the most sense. Because other than that, I don't know what happened there.
We have a lot of theories. We have
Well, a lot of
theories.
theories. I like we have a guest in a future episode who spoke about, he thinks that like a lot of Eric's response is from trauma. And I just think that that's such a fascinating look, because there is like a point in time where Eric goes from like really trying to, I don't know, like be normal, and then like there's
He
a
tries to
turning point.
graduate. He tries to get into college. He like struggles all the time. He tries to have a successful relationship, and then he just begins acting out more and more for attention. His parents start paying less attention to him. It's an interesting theory that like even in this episode I kind of thought about a little bit.
Absolutely.
I like the theory that it's from the perspective of Cory, and
Yes.
One of my favorites.
like we idolize our older siblings, cousins, whatever, and as we start to get older, we realize they're not so bright, or you know. I like that one.
That's a very forgiving theory, because as accurate as it is, it does like give Michael Jacobs a lot of credit that he had that theory from the beginning. But
Right.
in order just interpreting it from rewatching it, it's a beautiful way to see it, because you know, you're right. As we grow up, we understand our siblings and our parents so much better, and our understanding of them changes as well. So totally makes sense.
All right. Are you guys ready to talk about this episode?
Yeah.
I'm so excited to, like, I'm really, you know what? I'm also happy that we have like we get multiple viewpoints on what I will say is like two really interesting storylines. I feel like either storyline could have been enough for an episode, and the fact that we get both makes me want to like deep dive into this.
Yes, definitely.
But in order to do that, I feel like we're gonna have to do the tell me about it.
Tell me about it. Shawn and Jack process a lot. Topanga and Cory don't know each other as well as they thought. And Jack and Rachel share a kiss but end up getting caught.
Okay, Doja Cat with the fast lyrics mid.
There was a lot in this episode. I had to
There
fit
was
a lot in.
going on. Speaking of a lot going on, all right, I'm about to get into this recap, which is very long, so bear with me. But this is season 6, episode 14, Getting Married.
Getting hitched.
Getting hitched. Is it hitched? Hold on.
Yeah.
I thought it was, yeah.
I copied it from the thing, but I'll say getting hitched. All right, hold on. This is season 6, episode 14, Getting Hitched. Cory and Topanga play the fiance game to prove how compatible they are, and are appalled when Eric and Rachel prove to know far more about each other than they do. Topanga suggests a quick solution. They should live together on campus and really get to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
Cory mistakenly thinks this means sex and buys silk pajamas and sheets, But living together shows them sides of each other they are not too crazy about. Meanwhile, in a B storyline, Shawn has ignored Jack's repeated calls about clearing out Chet's trailer, and once persuaded, is freshly outraged to discover evidence that Chet went to Jack's stepfather for help in financing Shawn's college education. He decides to take the trailer out on the open road and convinces Cory to accompany him for the weekend, but oddly insists to saying goodbye to Topanga. As we wrap up the A storyline, Jack, who has been struggling to contain his own grief in difference to Shawn's feelings, falls apart and cries helplessly in Rachel's arm, and Eric walks in on them, Rachel and Jack kissing. That is our episode. Okay, so first thoughts is where we go with this.
Jackie,
Danielle, Jackie, give us what you want.
There is a lot going on in this
So
episode.
much.
And I will preface this by when we were looking at what episode we were given, Danielle and I have both lost our fathers. So I'm like, oh gosh, it's the dad cleaning out the trailer. Like, we're like, at least it was in the episode before, because it would have just been
too
like
hard.
in tears. But it was very, very relatable for us to watch Shawn process his grief, and Jack as well.
Oh,
so,
this is the perfect episode for you guys.
That was those were my thoughts.
You know, that's such a powerful perspective, because I want to say that, like, I wasn't thinking about that as much in this episode as much as I was thinking about the ongoing story arcs that have been building throughout the season. But that's such a great point, that they really do showcase both of their griefs, like both of them grieving differently, in such an interesting and thoughtful and considerate way, that I'm really excited to kind of break down a little further later on.
Yeah, I thought they handled it very well with, you know, Jack being very much, even though him and Shawn did not grow up together, he very much was in that older brother role. And Jackie and I are both the oldest siblings, and it's just very difficult. You know, it's almost like you don't feel like you have permission to grieve yet until you know that your younger siblings are. And then I know from Jack's perspective, you know, he has a very complicated relationship with his father, and he almost maybe not feeling like he has the right to grieve in the same way that maybe Shawn would, because he didn't know his dad on the same level. So there's just so many layers there that I thought were very interesting, and they did a really good job. And I think Ryder Strong always does amazing when he gets these kind of pieces of material on the show. I would have to say he's probably one of their strongest actors on the show, just from that perspective. But it was also really fun to see Cory and Topanga being lighthearted and having real conversations, because I mean, it is a little unrealistic that people who met in elementary school would end up being together, but they tried to like elevate their relationship and get to know each other. I do want to say that, like, there's an episode of Parks and Rec where it's literally the same premise of this like newlywed game kind of situation. Andy and April on that show play like the Topanga and Cory role, where they're in a relationship and they should get their answers right, but they do horribly against two of their co-workers, Donna and Jerry, who are not even together. They ace it. So I was like, oh my God, Parks and Rec stole from Boy Meets World. I love it.
Well, they stole Adam Scott from Boy Meets World, so there you go.
I was just gonna say that. I love that. And that's actually, you know, I love that you guys are also oldest siblings, because I always think about how birth order and having siblings plays a role in the stories that we're telling. And you're right, you made me think about something that I completely forgot about, but like in an emergency with my, like, if my younger sister is there, it's like I have to keep it together, because if I fall apart, she falls apart.
Right.
So it's like we have to, as the oldest sibling, kind of like be the one who's just like, okay, we're gonna do what needs to be done. We're gonna make the responsible choices. You can feel however you really need to feel.
Siege, did you have a first take from the episode?
My first take was like, I wish there were two things. One, I wish that we kind of like opened up with the Jack and Shawn storyline, because like I don't know about anyone else, but like it showed the recap of the previous episode right when I was watching this one, and then to have like something so heavy, and then you just open up on Cory and Topanga in the common room, you're like, can we get a little bit more like time to deal with what we just witnessed? You know, and then it's just like, oh, it's literally fun and games in the first part, and I was like, I feel like this is like disrespectful to Chet, like what just happened. So I kind of wish that we had opened up on like what I feel is like the heavier storyline. But I will say I enjoyed getting to see the actors kind of like for the first time really interact with each other
as
family. Like getting Jack and Shawn having the scenes together where they are acknowledging that they're brothers and that they can visit each other on campus is amazing. Seeing Cory and Eric have moments, and then I really enjoyed, there's a scene like halfway through the episode where Eric is just kind of like playing with Topanga, and I'm like, yes, you guys have known each other for years. There is a familiarity that should be there, and it's so weird that we don't get scenes like this very often.
I totally agree about there not being enough brotherly scenes, and that really stood out to me in this episode as well. I really want to dive into the episode, but I just have to say, I cannot tell you, and I said this to Siege last episode, I have to say it again, I am so annoyed and frustrated that they finally gave Matt Lawrence a storyline with like meat on it. He's a grieving son who's, you know, grieving the death of a father he never knew. There's so much there. And to pivot that into the Rachel relationship, for that to be the thing that made it happen, to me just makes no sense to me. It's so frustrating. I know we're going to talk about it more later, but I still like hate that, you know, he was never given a good storyline until this moment, and then to immediately like revert focus of this kid who has a lot to grieve over and turn it into a romance and have that be the spark for the next storyline. Like I don't know, it just didn't sit well with me. So
do you guys think that it would have been actually really cool to play, instead of like bringing Rachel into that whole thing, if the fact that Jack couldn't have like reached Shawn and had to ask Eric? Because if you think about it, Eric has been his oldest brother more than Jack has his whole life, and that could have actually caused even more jealousy, because you could get through to my brother, but I couldn't. I just thought that would have been like really cool to play with.
That's a great storyline idea. Like having, no, it just is like, especially since we used Eric so much in this episode, to have Eric go and talk to Shawn, and actually, like, I will also say, the pivot of Shawn happens so fast, of being like, I don't want to just almost like in a very healthy way, but like, how did we get here type way.
Yeah.
Shawn's just like, I thought about it, I was overreacting, I'm here. And I'm like, wait. I love that you did this, but like, how did we get here? Right. Like, you know, and I feel like there's so much that happens off screen in this episode. And I would have loved to use Eric in this way, to your point, Danielle, of having Eric really go to Shawn and be like, be funny with it, having some kind of line, but then attempting to bring Shawn and Jack closer together, but it actually causing a rift between these two roommates because of, as you said, the fact that Jack is like, oh, that was my role and you've taken it from me.
Yeah.
Where do you want to get started with this?
Okay, all right. So like, no. You know what? Let's stick with kind of what is known as like the B storyline, but we've been talking a lot about Shawn and the Hunters is I think a great way to say this. I don't know about anyone else, but like I really did appreciate getting this time to mourn Chet as a viewer. Like, I feel like I'm really glad like they didn't just be like, that happened last week, people are dealing with it. It's like, no, like we've gotten this in a way that we haven't gotten from any other character. Like, what's his name? Turner was in a car accident, and it was like a really big deal and we just move on, and it's like never really acknowledged again. So to give weight to Chet's exit is actually, again, I kind of wish we had opened with it, but I really appreciated that that's what we do.
Yeah. And I think it speaks to, you know, Shawn as a character too, because that he's struggled with this lack of father figure presence. And, you know, Turner, I don't know why they've lost over it, but I don't think you would have been able to have that happen with this, especially now that Jack is on the show. It's and Shawn says it's the thing that bonds them essentially. Yep. So it has to be addressed. So I'm glad they gave them 2 episodes.
I really like how you know, they show the different ways that the brothers are grieving. I love that we're getting the snapshot of this kid who grew up being traumatized in a lot of ways by his father, saying you're so lucky that you don't have to carry around this childhood trauma for the rest of your life. And this other kid who's essentially like, I'm never going to get the chance to know my father ever. And, you know, them kind of playing the, well, what's worse game versus kind of taking the time to understand what each other's going through. That's why, you know, towards the end of this episode, when Jack kind of reconciles with Rachel, to me, it would have been far more richer for him to kind of have that reconciliation with Shawn, where Shawn kind of takes a moment to understand how Jack's grieving and appreciates what he's going through a little bit more. But I do appreciate that we got to see the different showcases of how they're grieving.
I think it's realistic though, like that grieving process. I mean, it's very difficult for a sitcom to tackle it, because realistically, it's just it's a never ending process essentially. And Shawn is not done with his arc yet of grieving. So for him and Jack to kind of have met in some common ground to see that like Shawn is not even in that place. And I think that's where Jack kind of has that breakdown, because he's like, you know what, I can't keep holding it in, and Shawn is not getting here as fast as I can hold it in anymore. That, I don't know, that's how I kind of saw it.
I will say a little bit, like I watched this and I was thinking it's also a missed opportunity to just kind of use some of the other casts. I feel like Rusty would have been a really great addition. You know, like why, like they're like, we haven't heard from Shawn. Shawn's, you know, not answering our calls, but like, would they not all like everyone rallied for Chet's death? So the fact that Jack is like, hey, we have to go clean out Chet's trailer, and it's just the 2 of them, it feels like the cast is missing. I feel like Alan and Amy would be there to help. I feel like Cory should be there.
Beanie, Eric, like they would all be there. Yeah.
Exactly. And it makes sense that Jack is the one. Again, everything we've seen about Jack is he's the responsible one. So for him being like, hey, we have to do this, you know, it's up to us. That's one thing. But I really do feel like the rest of the cast being there wouldn't have taken away. We still could have had this exact same fight just with them, you know, them there.
It's kind of crazy because they're young. They're kids essentially. Yeah, they're in college, but like there should be adults helping with this whole process. Like to have to figure out what to do when someone dies. It's not just like cleaning stuff out. There's like bills, there's like money, there's finances, there's a whole bunch of other elements. So it is kind of crazy that they just let 2 college students just handle it without any help. It's nuts.
Even if you just gave Jack and Shawn their moment at the beginning, like Shawn shows up, like I've had a change of heart, and then everyone else starts trickling in, like we're here for you guys, whatever you need, and kind of that would give Jack and Shawn their moment to have their discussions, and that kind of dad was never there versus all of this trauma from him, and then but also showing what a support system that they have.
It's also disappointing that Cory doesn't notice that Shawn is deflecting as usual. Because again, this is pattern. Like Shawn does this. He pretends everything's fine and like doesn't want to deal with a problem that's too big for him. And like Cory just kind of goes along with it, as it seems in this episode.
Cory says, I've been looking everywhere for Shawn. He's in his dorm.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was my whole thing. In reality, what really bothered me was there's even later on where Shawn is at the trailer and Cory and Topanga are like, we should move in together. And I was like, Shawn still lives there. Like
Yeah.
have you had a conversation? Can we see the conversation? Can you refer to a conversation that you had? Later on, they do have like Cory be like, hey, thanks for letting us have it. But like, you didn't know where he was earlier, and you agreed to moving in together and like giving part of Shawn, who has lost everything. You are moving him out, and not you going into Topanga's room, but you moved him out of his space at the time where he would need you the most.
Or at the time where he would need a home, he would need a home base, he would need something secure that he can go back to, and you're taking that away so you guys can experiment with living. Like, it just seems weird.
Cory is so selfish.
Very much.
Say it again.
He is.
This episode is really about that. I want to stick with like the Hunter's storyline, but Cory being selfish we'll have to come back to. Also, speaking of like a place to call home, I was like, Chet has had this trailer the entire time. How many times have we seen Shawn like need a place to stay? Why did Shawn not live in the trailer? Like, it's the same trailer, or at least it's a close enough trailer for Shawn to access, and we've seen the trailer park. So why has he not been staying at this trailer the entire time?
This is a great question. And can I just
room and board?
Can I just say this? So this is not the same trailer we see in seasons 2, 3, and 4.
It's not.
The original trailer is a double wide. You can see that there is a door that goes into a hallway that has bedrooms and whatever.
Thank you.
This is not that. This is a trailer that Shawn is able to hitch up to a truck and drive away. I think we're supposed to assume that every time Chet went away, he just took his house with him.
Yeah.
He was just like, Shawn, you're better to stay in your school. We'll find you lodging, but I'm going to take our house with us, which again, seems very selfish. Clearly, Chet had a truck. He could have left the house back, but you know.
Here's the thing. That makes sense. Thank you for clarifying. I feel like that does answer a lot of my questions, but it still is kind of like messed up in the sense of you have Shawn paying, like, rooms in college aren't free. You pay for that shit.
Well, he's not paying for it, actually. We come to find out.
Well, so, and I do have a question about that. The next thing I was going to bring up is, where did Shawn think him money for college was coming from?
Right.
He didn't apply for a Singer scholarship. Even if Chet was like, I'm paying for it, where did you think Chet was getting the money? Like, where did you think your tuition was coming from? I just found this very hard to believe that Shawn wouldn't know where his college financing is coming from.
And to get so upset that someone cared enough about their stepson to be able to put their brother through college too. Like, it's such a thoughtful gesture on the part of the stepdad. And I get like Shawn is grieving, and I'm sure he has trauma about always being looked at as a charity case, but it was just such a thoughtful thing to do, and to attack Jack for that. And Jack really had nothing to do with it, I would assume, other than being Shawn's brother. It was just, it was really sad, like that whole interaction, because Jack's like, lost my dad. Now my brother's mad at me because my stepdad is like putting him through college. Like, he couldn't win.
It's just like a younger sibling to be all about themselves and not looking at the sacrifices that you make to help them out. But I do like that you see the growth in Shawn, that he is able to say he's sorry and not kind of stay in it. So, but it was like really heart-wrenching to watch him do that to Jack.
I really like the moment where Jack's like, bruh, can you see how hard it must have been for Chet to go to my stepdad and ask for money? Like, he is such like, I mean, I don't have siblings, but in terms of just being the mature older sibling, he definitely gives that perspective. He's able to humanize Chet and make him a person. And it's probably because he doesn't have all this drama and trauma attached to his relationship. He's able to kind of just see him for a man that he is. But I'm glad that he's able to give that perspective to Shawn as well.
I feel like we've done a disservice to Jack's character by not introducing his stepfather at any point in time, because his stepfather is such a huge part of everything. It was like, hey, we don't know what he does. We just know that his stepfather has money. Every time they're like, oh, we need something, Jack's like, oh, my stepfather's money. I think it would have been, this would have been a great episode to introduce the stepdad and have the stepdad be like, hey, Shawn, don't worry, I'll continue to pay the tuition. And Shawn being like, wait, what? You know, like that would have been a really great reveal. Having another father there to kind of, again, be supportive of Jack, but then also show like what the absence that Shawn has ever had. I just feel like this was such a missed opportunity to actually explore the stepfather, because he is really generous. And
guys,
I feel like we kind of need some of that.
Let's do this right now. It's 1998. All right. Is it 98, 99? Fancast this. Who is the TGIF ABC cameo that comes in to play Jack's father?
Can it be John Stamos? Because why not?
That's who I was gonna say.
Really?
Yeah. As soon as we started talking about it, I was like, John Stamos would be the perfect like stepdaddy to come in and just like, here I am.
Wow.
He is the ultimate stepdaddy.
Yes.
The stepzaddy.
That's so like I like that. I never would have thought that, but I think it's so perfect.
I think a good second would have been George Clooney.
Ooh. NBC, I don't know. I don't know if the networks would have allowed it.
We were doing ER at that time.
Yeah, it would have made for a good one. I think George had moved on to films at that point. Perhaps.
T, who would you have done?
Oh, you know, I'm again, don't know where he is, but he at this point, but he was on ABC for a long time. I'm gonna go with Canadian heartthrob Alan Thicke. To me, he kind of has that kind of like, you know, I come from money. I kind of have like more of an upper class background that would kind of lean into some of the class differences that Shawn has tried to point out. You know, John Stamos to me comes across as a very like blue collar guy, so maybe he could have like dressed it up, same with Clooney, but I think both of them have a lot of coolness that to me is more in line with the Hunter lineage. And I don't know, I think someone a little nerdier would have made a good fit. What about
really?
You,
so like I was gonna say, like I'm looking at this, it was the first person who came to my mind, and it's Dermot Mulroney.
Oh yes, Dermot Mulroney would have been great.
Like that was someone where I was like, I feel like he would give like that father knows best, really like, I'm wealthy but I'm also have a good head on my shoulders, but I also like I will say something like, hey Shawn, I got you, and you're like, why would you say that, you know, like like I just feel like I got that immediately from him, and it felt very 90s.
So, or maybe we should throw off all expectations and it's Ving Rhames.
Ooh, they never say if he was a black stepdaddy.
That would be hilarious. When you were like going completely different direction, I was thinking like Danny DeVito, but like I love the idea of like just Ving Rhames showing up. That's a whole other. Here's the thing. You don't have him just show up and be the stepdaddy and not ask questions. There are so many questions that we have.
I actually have a question for you guys too. You know, one of the things I think is really important about this dynamic, while we're talking about just the class differences between the two brothers, is that Shawn really doesn't feel like he has a connection or a sense of ownership over anything. And finding out that, you know, Jack's father, stepfather, was paying for his tuition and everything, he starts stripping down. He's just like, nothing is mine, nothing. And Jack's like, hey, it's cool, we're family. And Shawn's like, but what have I ever given you? And one of the reasons why I think that really resonates, and I just wanted to talk about it for a second, is because, you know, you see these relationships where you have like a friend or a relationship partner or a family member who makes a lot more money than the other person, and you know, you think, oh, you know, the wealthier person is spoiling this other person, they buy them gifts all the time, but you don't really take a look at, you know, how insecure that can make the other person in that dynamic. You know, Friends does a great job of having an episode where like I think it's Monica and Ross and Chandler, you know, the ones that have the good jobs, they all want to go out for a fancy dinner and a concert, but Rachel and Phoebe and Joey can't afford it. And that kind of dynamic of just like, you know, what's it mean to Yeah, I don't know, not be able to contribute equally to a relationship and how that, mentally can mess with the other person at the bottom half of it. I just thought was an interesting dynamic that
But
deserved talking about.
I think that's a really good conversation to have. And especially like, I've actually had to have it not just with friends, but like with my siblings, right? I'm older. So when our dad died, I was way better financially than the rest of them. But like, I think it's just to talk about what you do bring to a relationship. It's not just financial. And, I've had friendships where one of us is up and one of us is not so up, and one of us is down. And it's not just about money. It's the emotional work that is actually put into the relationship. So I think it's really important to have those conversations, whether it's like a boyfriend, girlfriend relationship, or a relationship with a friend, that you have to have these kind of conversations. Because I had a friend who, like, every time I would pay for something, would like give me money right away. And we had to kind of discuss where like that was coming from, and understand why, like, for me to give gifts or something was like my love language. And every time she did that, it actually made me feel bad that I did something. So it's a really good conversation to have with the people in your life, because you just don't know what life experiences someone had. And I think Jack should have said in that moment, yes, financially I'm giving to you, but I've always wanted a brother, and you give me so much more that you don't even realize. Like, that was a really good opportunity to kind of even things out,
Well, he tells Shawn exactly what he wants in return. He says, "Tell me about my father."
Yeah.
And we don't
that's true.
get that. And I find like it's just like, what am I doing for you? It's just like, you know what you could do? You could tell me about my father. You could let me get to know him a little bit better. And then we don't do that. And I feel like that's kind of like, it's one of those things where it's like a friend who's like, or even last episode where Shawn was like, "How much? I'll contribute." And it's like, "All right, this is how much it costs." And he's like, "Well, I can't do that." Like, I have a question for the group. I do want to know, do you like, I've been in situations where I don't make as much money. It's right now, I will say my fiance makes way more than I do. So he pays for things, or like we'll go out with friends who have really nice jobs and they pay for things. Do you feel like charity? I feel like it's so weird that there are all of these storylines on TV where people are like, "I don't want your charity." And I'm like, they're helping you out when you need it. Where is this coming from?
I have thoughts, but I'll let the ladies answer first.
Well, it's funny you should ask, because I was a elementary school teacher for years. My husband was a shop manager at a car dealership. He made like 3 times what I made. And during COVID, he was let go. And then I decided to change jobs. And I told him, I was like, with this new job, I think we're good. I don't think you need to get another job. And so he's what we lovingly refer to as my house husband. And like, he does like all the house maintenance. And it's not to say he doesn't go out and he does contract work, but he does it on his time. He doesn't have a 9 to 5. And so it's just, for me, I never felt like charity, but it's been nice that the roles are reversed now, and like what he was able to provide for me so long, now I can provide to him. It's just how partnerships work, whether it's a friendship or a relationship.
Yeah, I think again, it's just having that communication of like the value of the work that you're bringing into that relationship. I think that's a really good conversation, because, when we talk about like stay-at-home moms and stuff like that, there's a lot of labor that happens in the home that is beyond just like actual money.
Yeah.
So I think it's just really important to be on the same page with people, because a lot of people aren't into like capitalistic viewpoints of how I value my relationship. I actually care more if you're going to help me in the house and not even help, because I don't like that. You were living in your house by yourself before we got together, and you were doing your laundry and you were cooking and doing all of these things. I would like us to be able to like care for each other, you know, it just be reciprocated and not this like we're keeping tabs. And I kind of feel like that's what happens with the financial stuff. If you don't talk about it, that it ends up feeling like you're not really just living in your relationship, you're tallying up who's doing more, which isn't a good feeling either.
Definitely. Okay, Siege, I just want to kind of, because you were like, why does it feel like charity? And I want to just quickly tell a very brief story about, you know, growing up, my mom, she had a job, but she also had a second job where she would babysit a lot. And there was one girl that she babysitted for all the time. And like eventually, like she was babysitting for this woman who was very wealthy. And then just after a certain point, like they kept wanting to like buy my mom a car. They kept wanting to like get her things. And then eventually they wanted her to like move in and be their like live-in nanny and wear like an outfit, like a uniform and all this stuff. And then at a certain point, she was just like, I remember her specifically having this conversation with her in the car. I was like, when I was a kid, we were driving and we had this beat up car. And I was like, Mom, they're offering to give you another car. Why don't you just take it? And she's like, no, I'm going to give them money for it. I'm going to wait. I'm going to save some money and I'm going to give them something for it. Because it's this feeling of just like, I don't want anyone feeling like they have ownership over me.
Yeah.
And that was like something that I was taught so early. So like, like for example, I'm still in a relationship with my wife, but our first Christmas together, I had just moved to California and I was in between jobs and she was making a lot of money and she bought me this really nice Christmas gift. And I felt so uncomfortable with it that I was just like, oh, you know what? Maybe I just want a smaller version of this. Like, I was just like, oh, it's not quite the right fit. But really, I just felt super uncomfortable with the fact that she spent so much on me. And like, I don't know, like till this day, if I'm given like a gift that's like very, very elaborate and very expensive, I do feel naturally uncomfortable by it. So I can understand Shawn's stance about this idea of just like, well, what does it, and I'm sure a lot of it comes from this fear of just being like, feeling like there's strings attached to things. But you know, that's street knowledge, like you kind of have to know that like sometimes strings are attached. And so it's a healthy thing to be cautious of. So
I go ahead.
I love expensive gifts. I would love for you to buy my affection. I'm just putting that out there. Okay.
I love that. No, I'm happy. Like, so here's the thing. I'm happy that we're having this conversation because to me, I think I'm just like more aware of what my position is in life. And I'm like aware that sometimes people will have more money than you. Sometimes people will have less money than you. And you can only contribute what you can. I always tell any friend group I'm ever in, any relationship I've ever been in, it's like, I'm not trying to keep up with the Joneses. I make only but so much, and that's how much I will spend. I'm not going to spend money that I don't have. I'm not going to try to impress you with things that I can't do, because like that's not my journey. And so like, for example, my fiance's boss is a billionaire with a B. He bought us really nice engagement gifts. And I was like, yes, like that's what you can afford. You can afford that. So to you, this is the equivalent of buying someone a card. And so I don't feel bad. If Shawn had said what you said, which was like, where are the strings? What comes from this? Like, you don't own me, I completely would be with you. But he just goes, I'm no one's charity. And I'm like, I feel like that's just part of America hustle culture, which is like, you got to get your own. Don't let anybody buy you shit.
Yeah.
You a man. Buy me shit. If you can afford it and I can't, I'm here for it.
Well, Siege, you know, you bring up a great point. Like sometimes I'm up, sometimes you're up, but Shawn has never been up. He's never, with the exception of working for the mob, been able to afford nice gifts for his family and friends.
He's not even like 19 yet. The fact that he's had to go through this at such a young age, like it's not a thing that a kid should ever have to think about.
Sure.
And the way he talks to Jack isn't just about Jack, it's how he feels about Cory. He's had these conversations with Cory before, and Cory's parents and Turner. It's just that he feels like everyone's always trying to help him. And it might even go to his self-worth, because he doesn't understand why, because he has abandonment issues from his parents. And he probably feels like am I even worthy of all these people always constantly trying to give me something, you know? So him talking to Jack had more to do with him than Jack at all.
And I think a lot of times, you know, people try to financially help Shawn instead of hearing him basically say, like, I want to feel independent. Like, there's a difference between paying for something for someone and then giving them a job. And I think that for Shawn, he probably would have benefited more if he was like, if Jack was like, Jack was like, hey, my stepfather wants to give you a part-time job, you know, would you like to do that to pay your way through college? I think he would have been far more acceptable to that than just this blank check to pay for everything.
Or say, like, here's the plan after you stay in school, worry about school, you work your ass off in school, and here's the payment plan, or here's what our plan's going to be after you graduate, because he's still a kid.
Yeah,
and I
definitely
think that's just like lost on him because he's been put in so many adult situations, which is sad.
Yeah. But also to everything that everyone said, I actually really enjoy, and I feel like it actually does add a color to like why Shawn's making these decisions. But I want to go back to, how did Shawn think school was being paid for? Did you think school was just free and you just went? Like, that's what's confusing, because he's like, wait, like I would have loved if we would have gotten some hint that Shawn was still working at that photographer that he was interning and he was bringing in some money, or, you know, he thought tuition was lower than what it was. Like, I needed there to be some reason that Shawn was just completely taken aback that his tuition was paid for, because I'm like, who did you think was paying for this?
So I can tell you a real life experience, which is when your dad kind of is an F up a lot, and they step up once, you don't ask questions. It's like this weird delusional thing that happens. You kind of revert to being a kid, and all you ever want is to be taken care of, like to be the child in the relationship. And so when you have those opportunities, it's a little odd because you're so used to the rug being pulled from under you, but also it's that you have that yearning so much that you kind of just don't even question it. You're just like, my dad, the person that you built up in your head finally lived up to it, and you don't want to mess with it. That's the only thing that I could think of.
Yeah, the willful ignorance. Like, somehow dad's making this work. Like, and that's all I need to know is, like, my college is being paid for.
You know, it's so interesting. They really could have used this episode and this revelation of Shawn, you know, realizing that he has had everything paid for him, and turn that into like entrepreneurial Shawn. Like we saw Shawn when him and Cory did that Airbnb at Feeney's house, how much of like a hustler he was and how much business savvy he had. We saw that the same way when they were betting on horses at the track, you know, that Shawn has a little bit of business savvy, and it would have been like this really interesting thing to see him use this motivation of not wanting to be dependent on anyone to strive for independence and use that to fuel him, versus kind of like isolating himself, which is fair, like he's grieving, but it just would have been an interesting take to have with him.
Or also, you know, I just like, I'm listening to everyone. I was like, I would have liked a scene where Shawn was just like, if you want to know about Chet, what kind of person Chet is, Chet's the type of person who will let you think that he's paying for college and someone else is footing the bill. Like, you know, be angry with Chet, be mad, but like also answer that question that Jack is like, which is like, I want to know more about my dad. Exactly. My dad is the type of person who will let me think that he's paying for my college, and that never was the case. You know, like I feel like that would have been a good exploration of like, what do you do when the person who you've always kind of looked up to, or when your father turns out to be less than what you've wanted, and that's all you're left with. Like, him and Jack could have bonded over the fact that Chet wasn't the greatest guy.
Yeah.
Also, I like, I know I asked the question, but I did think to myself, is it Chet's willingness to constantly take handouts that makes Shawn embarrassed too? Because like, one thing we know is like, we've seen Chet be like, hey, can you take my boy? Hey, can I have this money? Hey, like, Chet's always asking for handouts. Chet doesn't feel like it's charity. So I wonder if like maybe that is where this comes from, of Shawn being like, I don't want to be like him. I want to earn everything that I have.
Yeah, I'm sure that came from a young Shawn being embarrassed by his dad. Because God knows what kind of interactions Chet had even before we started seeing the show, like between, you know, Shawn and Cory's parents and all sorts of stuff.
Definitely. Anything else about this Shawn and Jack storyline that you guys want to mention?
The idea of Shawn being like, Chet left me this trailer. Again, if Chet in fact left you this trailer most likely is not paid for. Everything's past due. We saw that in this episode.
Yeah, that's what I thought was interesting, that like we didn't talk about the debt that Chet probably left behind and like how that would affect the boys. Like that would have been an interesting thing to kind of touch on a little bit.
Absolutely.
Definitely
and then the last,
a realistic one for sure. Anybody who's dealt with death.
And that, again, I would have loved for them to actually be like, for Jack to kind of like stand up for himself and be like, hey, you think that this is easy? There's a bunch of debt that goes into covering from him, and I'm going to do that. And I understand that like, it's not like a great thing and you will feel it some type of way, but someone has to. I just want to like to wrap up the Shawn aspect of this, because we do have to get into the Jack aspect of this. The Shawn aspect of this, of Shawn being like, hey, I think I'm going to just get out of here, which is very Chet to do. And I'm going to just go and find myself. Cory, I want you to come with me, is very interesting because Cory agrees, which is fine. They don't tell Topanga. Yes. Like, you don't just go on a road trip, even like you're grieving. You say to your fiance, hey, Shawn is grieving. He wants to go on a road trip. That's where I'll be. Fine. But he's like, why are we even telling Topanga? Why are we stopping by? Let's just grab shit and go. And I'm like, that's not what you do when you're engaged.
And Topanga doesn't ask any questions.
Yes.
No.
She's like, you're trimming her toenails, like, okay, see you guys later. I'm like, no, like, where are you going? When are you gonna be back? Just like basic like decency of, hey, we have myself up, like something. So she knows you're alive.
Why do you think that it was so important to Shawn that he had to say goodbye to Topanga?
I think they're trying to lead to this idea that he ain't coming back.
Correct. I think that's what I got. I got that he was like, oh, I'm leaving and I'm not coming back. And that's why I want to say goodbye to Topanga, which, like, again, I will say, like, I was able to infer that and I could get it. But it's like, if that is true, then you do need Cory to pack a bag. That's it. That's all I'm saying.
Or they already made a point of saying that Topanga had moved out of the room. Why is she cutting her toenails in there? Like, no questions? This is just her toenail room? Okay, cool.
It's the toenail room. I like that.
Should we rewind back to the beginning of their storyline?
No. Because we have Jack that we need to talk about.
Okay.
And Jack and Rachel, I will say, so you guys listen to the show. You know how I feel about Jack and Eric. I always feel like they are, will they, won't they? I always feel like, and to me, two things happen with this storyline that I was like, actually, I wish we would deep dive into this. One is, it is so reasonable that Jack, who breaks down, would kind of hook up with the first person who actually pays attention to him and gives him comfort. I was like, that makes sense. Not a good idea, but it completely makes sense that he would just kind of like want to process his pain through intimacy in some other way. I wish we had seen Jack as kind of like this lover beforehand, so it makes more sense, like he's going back to his old ways. But it just kind of like comes out of nowhere that he and Rachel finally cross that threshold in this episode.
I don't think it's weird, actually.
Ooh.
Mainly because Jack is like a type A personality, right? So he has been bottled up for so many things. He's been keeping all these secrets about Chet for he does things up for the sake of others, right? He's very much a people pleaser. And in this moment, it's just raw. He doesn't have any more energy left to bottle up him wanting to cry. He has no more energy to pretend he doesn't worship Rachel at this point. Like, he likes her. And they have this intimate moment, and he's just in a very vulnerable space that he's not thinking about Eric and their friendship. He's not thinking about anything. He does just pure, basic, what is instinctual to him that he normally holds back on. That's what I think.
I love that. That's actually really good.
But
Don't
she
be so
also
surprised,
did.
CJ.
No. Sorry. Like the surprise was not that you had a good point. The surprise was like that I completely was like, why now? It kind of felt like a convenience, but you're right in the sense of this is Jack who has been putting everyone else first. And in this moment, he's like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, I'm gonna go for what I want for once. And I actually I think that totally fits. You were gonna say, Jackie?
Oh, Danielle also turned to me and was like, this is a polyamorous relationship that makes sense.
100%.
It does. All right. So what I was going to say is also, again, in my head canon, Jack is questioning his sexuality this entire time. He's really close to Eric. And I feel like, again, if we're talking about grief and people who take actions, there's this idea of him looking at Rachel and being like, you know what? I'm going to go through with this other thing and kind of like, again, push back my other truth and then just get lost in the moat. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be vulnerable with Eric because that will put me in a more vulnerable position with these feelings that I'm already dealing with. So instead, I'm going to kind of double down and be manly and be with a woman in a sense that it kind of takes away all the other things that like I have to deal with and question. Like that was my response of seeing it. Of like, again, it's all headcanon. It's not necessarily there, but I can read into it, and that's what I decided to do.
I totally could see Jack as being bi, and I think the three of them, I think they're more of a case of a polyamorous relationship than Topanga, Shawn, and Cory, because the key component is that Shawn has never, like, he doesn't feel that way about Topanga, and you know, Cory's totally down for Shawn, but it's the Topanga angle that makes it a little like not possible for both of them. They don't have feelings for each other, but these three 100% could see it.
Love it.
Guys, I have to strongly disagree with all of this.
Okay. Go ahead.
Everyone's opinion, everyone has a valid opinion. I disagree with all of this simply because the entire season we have seen both Jack and Eric completely treat Rachel like a sexual object, not respecting her boundaries, spying on her weirdly. At one point in the episode, Rachel's like, how'd you know that thing about me in the shower? And Eric's like, don't worry about it. Like, what the hell is going on between these people? Like, there's never been a moment where Rachel has like showed romantic interest towards Jack or Eric at any point. So to me, it's like, okay, if you were going to go here, at least show her favoring Jack over Eric, to kind of like plant those breadcrumbs, like lay those out so that we could see this unfold in a really organic way. But what it seems like is that, like, once again, Rachel is just a woman who's there.
She's an object for sure. And
like for her to, like, the only way that they could pull her in was not to have her like say like, maybe, you know, I lost a parent, maybe like, hey, I've grieved, I've lost someone, like just to relate to him as a friend, which could have been richer, and Boy Meets World is famous for having those moments. They turned it into a relationship that has literally not been laid out or set up at all. I again feel very like we were cheated out of seeing Jack have like a moment that just kind of spotlighted him as an individual, versus like using this as like the catalyst towards this love triangle that to me again just doesn't make sense. I don't see why Rachel would want to date either of them. And if they were gonna have this, at least have a moment where Rachel and you know, Eric are like, Eric's like, you know, I feel like we're getting along really well. And she's like, yeah, we are. But remember when you like trapped me in my room in the apartment and like you like walled it up and had me like face my childhood trauma by going over that disposal? Yeah, we're still not good. Like something like that, to just be like, hey, there's a reason why like we have some beef or something.
Right.
Or to your point, just have Rachel say, Jack, you're always there for everybody. You were there for me when I needed you. You took me in, you know, like kind of like building this whole thing where like Rachel actually sees the weight of what he's dealing with. And in doing so, realizes her feelings, or kind of like is like it. There's a way to lead up to it where you're like, oh, yes, Rachel kind of also got caught up in the moment, and now they've made a decision that they both have to deal with. But it's weird to start the episode off with Eric and Rachel being like, you basically like, Rachel really gets Eric, and that's like Eric reading into it makes sense. And then to end with Rachel kissing Jack, where again, we haven't seen Rachel or Jack interact at all this episode until this moment. You were right in the sense of she's just a woman that is there and they use her for that. But I also agree that it makes sense for Jack's behavior.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make like the show itself requires us to read into all of these things and ask these questions, which to me is lazy writing.
Definitely.
Well, you really do have to ask the question, which woman on this show has ever gotten a fully fleshed out characterization and that hasn't been used as an object or a vehicle to move storylines for the male counterparts at all on this show.
That's been the most disappointing thing about rewatching the series, is going into it thinking that Topanga had more to offer than just being a vehicle for Cory, but that's ultimately what it ends up being.
Yeah. Rachel is just like the worst end of the spectrum. Topanga is like what we get the best, and Angela gets the short stick essentially because
Morgan gets the short stick.
Or Morgan and their mom.
Rest in peace, Morgan.
Yeah, I like to your point, this reminded me, there's a line where Shawn's like, Angela's not in my life anymore, and I was like, she's not in this episode at all. Like, there were plenty of times where I feel like she could have been there, she should have been there, and she's just nowhere to be found. And also to your point, Danielle, I feel like Angela is they did the safe thing of like, they don't make her Topanga and like she's too good, but they also don't make her a sexual object like they do with Rachel. And they kind of
don't know what to do with women if they don't have those two, though.
But again, a black woman, they were like, we're not touching that.
I was surprised as much as we got from Angela, but that's like a whole nother conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm ready to go to like we've kind of talked about it a little bit. This fiance game. So how do you feel about these type of games? Like, where do you, or even this type of storyline?
I mean, I thought it was funny. It seems like something stupid that they would do. But I feel like those kind of games always can be kind of scary. There's these little things you don't always know about everybody. Sometimes, like Jackie and I could play the best friend game and we might be in some trouble with some things. Every day I'm still learning. I was like, wait, you don't like this? Oh,
she brought me chicken tenders from Dairy Queen today for lunch, which was so sweet. And I was like, I don't eat chicken tenders from Dairy Queen.
You don't eat chicken tenders? I feel like we should talk about that.
Chicken tenders?
Not all chicken tenders. It's just from Dairy Queen. But
okay.
She does not like chicken with the bone.
Yes.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Okay.
Which my husband, if there is a chicken on the bone situation, like we're at a restaurant or a friend's house or something, he will take it off my plate, debone it, give me all the white meat. And then...
That is so sweet.
That's love.
I don't know. That's romance to me.
We went to medieval times when I first moved to Texas with him, and they set half a chicken in front of me, and I just looked at him, and he just reached over and deboned it for me. I'm like, this is the rest of your life. I hope you know.
It's what he wanted.
This is the rom-com storytelling I need more of. Because that is like true love. It's funny, you were saying earlier, I feel like every other week TC and I are like, wait, it's about you. I've known you the majority of my life and I had no idea. And saying that, like, the other day, for no real reason, I think I was like in that mindset of like, I knew this episode was coming, so I just like looked over at my fiance. I was like, what's your favorite movie? And I was like, oh, I figured I would know. And he said something, I was like, you have never mentioned that movie in the entirety that I have known you. He's like, it's my favorite movie. And I was like, we have not once seen it. You have not once referenced it. It was so crazy to me. But like,
well,
I just,
Siege,
yeah.
you bring up a good point, and a point that I think these kind of games and this kind of storyline kind of illustrates is that, like, you know, we think we know ourselves based on the last time we checked in with ourselves about something. So, like, maybe the last time Rex thought about his favorite movie, and when he decided it was his favorite movie, was 15 years ago. And even though he hasn't watched it since, and he hasn't really checked in with himself to see, oh, do I have a new favorite movie? That just might be his go-to answer. And so, like, the whole idea that Cory and Topanga don't know each other makes a lot of sense because they're not having any of these conversations. Like, we learned that from the very Topanga Christmas episode. These people don't talk to each other. They don't really know each other. Like, he is never asking about her. It's always like, what's like thing is Cory into, and how does Topanga fit into it? Yeah, I just thought this whole storyline was really kind of silly, even though I love Will Friedle's performance as Eric during this whole thing. I thought him and Rachel had really good, funny chemistry during the game, and I love that Feeny was excited to play.
Yeah,
I just think it's really interesting to see Cory and Topanga's relationship rewatching this episode and seeing what they're like in the spinoff or reboot for Girl Meets World.
We don't talk about it.
Sorry.
No, I'm joking.
But just like how their relationship has matured and how Cory, I think, is actually a lot better in that series from, you know, and maybe it's because it's just years of being with Topanga. He's not nearly as selfish, I don't believe, in that. So it's like, it gives me, I didn't hate him as much watching because I know, okay, he gets better. She's not just in this for nothing. That's how I coped with it.
Him this episode because I felt like this episode was something that we've been getting a lot of lately, which is it's the most I hate my wife, she's a nag type situation where it's just like to have Cory just like be yelling at her, be like, it's just a game and like all this other stuff where it's like it's clearly important to her. So like listen to what she's saying. You guys don't know everything. I agree that like not knowing everything about your partner is like not knowing what your partner's favorite fish isn't like the end all be all, but also it is important to her and like try to figure out what that is. You guys are getting engaged and she's clearly trying to understand the person that she's agreeing to be with for the rest of her life. And I think that it was legitimate. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, what do you guys think about this idea that you have to live with someone in order to get to know them?
I think it's true.
My perspective is a little different because for the first year that my husband and I were together, it was long distance. I think like that was one of the best things for our relationship because you really had to talk, and we talked every night, and we enjoyed when we got to spend time together, but we really were able to talk through a lot of stuff prior to even moving in together. And then we moved in together. And so like, I think that was just a really nice jumping off point, is like just being able to communicate in that manner and learning how to your communication styles, and it's all over the phone. So you really like, if you get mad, you can hang up the phone, I guess, but like really working out your differences through talking.
But I feel like you have to do, feel like you have to do one or the other. Like you either have to communicate constantly and that distance means that you are communicating, or you kind of do need to, like, you need to know what you're signing up for. Yep. At least that's my approach to it, of any kind of relationship, because it's easy to be someone in public or when you're out on dates or whatever, but you are a different person at night. You're a different person when you're hungry. You're a different person when you're about to go to bed. And all of those things are really telling. And I've personally, both with roommates and relationships, I'm like usually a very talkative person. I'm a very social person. But when I'm at home, they're like, where's that guy? And I'm like, that guy is the public facing guy. At home, me is tired and doesn't want to talk for the next 2 hours. Like I can go 2 hours without even opening my mouth and be just happy. And so you need to know what that behind closed door person is. So I kind of like that aspect.
I also think age is a huge component, right?
Mm.
Like, oh, young Danielle, she was so dumb, but so sweet and so like willing and open, right? When I was dating in my 20s, it was totally different. But now I'm 40 and
Say it, own it, it's great.
but now that I'm in my 40s, it's just like a totally different environment because I have built an entire ecosystem for myself.
Yeah.
And so like I think just the flexibility that I used to have and openness to like be with someone else is totally different. Now I'm like, I don't know.
Sure, yeah.
How do you feel about us having separate rooms? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm even open if you keep your place and I keep mine.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that kind of domestic relationship? Because it's like you've got to give up so much of your independence and yourself to be in that relationship. And as you get older, I think it just becomes more difficult.
It's just
Honestly, I forgot I don't know who it was, but I had a friend who so actually right before the holidays we were going to buy a new bed, and like because our bed just wasn't working, and so my fiance slept in one room and I slept in the other, and he was like, it's like the best night's sleep I've had. And it's like they're like, we were talking to other people and they were like, yeah, sometimes 7 bedrooms is like the thing to do. And I think really, as you were saying, getting older is kind of realizing, oh, sometimes the best thing that you could do for your relationship is kind of like have a little bit of difference, have a little bit of space.
I learned that as an only child, I always grew up having my own room. And once I like got married, I realized like, wow, like she's like, every now and then you'll just kind of like bury yourself in the office. And I was just like, yeah, I was just used to just having a space of my own where I could just like decompress. And like, it's like it's something I'm learning about myself. So
Birth order is very important in relationships.
Mhm.
It's very hard to have 2 older children be in a relationship. It's hard for a person who's has many siblings to be with an only child because it's just like they even only children have a different communication style because they did not grow up with other siblings to have that one-to-one conversation. It's like you're only engaging with adults, so you're having a totally different, your brain is wired differently. So yeah, that's another element I didn't even
This is so great. And I feel like we could just go on and on about like the different things that they could have done with the story, but I feel like that would have been a great conversation to have. Like Topanga is an only child, so Topanga going from being an only child who like currently
she has a sister named Nebula.
Oh, that is true. As far as this show goes, Topanga is an only child. But you're right. I'll take that back. Topanga has a sibling, but she also has a sister. She's living with a boy for the very first time, which is where I was going to go for that. And I think that that would have been very interesting to see Topanga have to like live with a boy. And I think it's so funny that like they're making fun of her for like her face routine. Someone who like is constantly telling her how beautiful she is. It's like, how do you think I got this way? But like, there's like, they just kind of like show him clipping his toenails. It's like, no, he would be dirty and messy and like all this other stuff. And it's just,
I would have liked if maybe she had to go to Eric for advice on something that he's doing, or like when he's sleeping, like what did you do about his snoring, or this weird habit of him counting how many times he's fluffing the damn pillow, like what did you do to like deal with this? Like that would have been kind of cool.
Or even at the end when she's doing her little baseball toenail clipping routine, if like they showed Cory with like a little bit, like not even his whole face done in the face mask, but maybe just his T-zone or something. Like he's learning from her, she's learning from him, instead of it's always
she's adapting.
Always Topanga adapting to Cory.
Such a great missed opportunity. I do want to point out, we talked about asking Eric. I love Eric's interaction. I love like how he just kind of breezes in, because again, as far as he's concerned, this is Cory's room. So he just kind of like breezes in because again, they're brothers. That's what you do. And
I love that dynamic, and I totally could have seen that being the spin-off show of Cory and Topanga in New York, and Eric is the Kramer next door who pops in. He has like these funny interactions. Like him and Danielle have great chemistry. Like I wish we saw more of them together. Like it was great.
It was great just to kind of see these actors who have known each other most of their lives get to play as people who, because I feel so often in this show they have Eric and Jack separated from Topanga, Cory, and Shawn and Angela. And it's great to be like, oh, wait, no, you know each other. You have scenes together. You can be familiar with each other. And so often it kind of feels like they're discovering each other for the very first time. And I feel like it was great that this episode wasn't that.
I loved when he was like, Pangy? Damn, girl, you look bad. I love it. I love the familiarity. Like, it's great.
The last thing I want to do with this storyline is Cory prays before bed.
Yes, I know that.
And
I
was like, where are we going with this? And also, I noticed that they were able to circumvent the man.
Yes.
Like, I was like, oh, so you want him praying, but you don't want to kind of like you don't want to like amen or have him on his knees or whatever. And it's just such a weird thing to interject in this show.
Yes.
They go back and forth with it.
It was kind of corny in a weird way and forced and just like, oh, okay, Cory can't hear Topanga coming back in the room. Also, I turned to Jackie and I said, I kind of wish that they had made Cory's character Jewish.
Right, just lean into it. Just lean into it. 100%. Yeah, you know, we just had the Christmas episode where Eric kind of cries out to God and blames him for Tommy coming into his life, even though Eric gaslit an orphanage into thinking he was the real Santa. Whatever. You know, we saw Shawn cry out to God when Turner got into his accident. But it is this thing of just like the show never really kind of takes like a definitive stance on where their moral ground are. And it just is interesting because it feels like the whole reason Cory prays is not because he has a relationship with God. It was to sympathize Cory into Topanga's eyes so that she would feel more comfortable marrying him. And it just didn't feel super genuine to Cory's character.
Correct.
No, it felt very on brand for Cory's character, manipulative and self-centered.
Like, I'm going to pray extra loud so she hears.
Right. I would have liked it better if, like, Eric came in and he was just talking to Eric about, like, how he's so grateful to have Topanga in his life. And then that's what Topanga overhears rather than this weird, like, almost breaking the fourth wall, telling the audience exactly what they need to hear so that Topanga can hear it type thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They also like throw that whole thing where he's like, take care of Chet. And you're like, oh, so you do remember that your father has died recently.
He says, yeah, it's so interesting because he says at the beginning, like they open the show with Cory just being like, I'm so worried about Shawn. I'm so worried about Shawn. That motherfucker doesn't check in with him at any point through the episode, except for like at the very, very end. And it just felt like, where were you this whole time, Cory? Like,
it felt very weird because, like, I understand that Cory wasn't very close to Chet, but like for me, when Jackie's dad passed away, like I grieved as well. So it just felt very weird that Cory could just like go about his day.
If Alan had died, Shawn would be right by Cory's side the entire time.
100%.
Well, I think I love that you guys are pointing this out because you were like, he wasn't that close to Chet. Chet has been a figure in his life for as long as Shawn has been. And like the thing about a dad like Chet is, especially when it's your best friend's dad, is you still know that guy.
Right.
Like you have your own relationship with him. You have your own understanding that he's not reliable. And when someone like Chet dies, you're like, oh, he will never be reliable.
Yeah.
Like that opportunity for him to ever kind of show up and be there for us is gone. And so Cory would absolutely not only be aware of like the grief that Shawn is going through, having lost a parent after already not knowing where his mother is, but he would also have his own relationship with like the loss of Chet. And I just feel like again, it doesn't make sense for Shawn to be so alone this
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah.
I just want to quickly say there was that episode, I think it's in like season 3, I want to say. I really can't find the actual episode, but there is an episode where Chet's missing and Cory goes looking for Chet. Cory's the one who's like, bro, you need to call your son. Like, he needs you. Like, there have been moments where Cory and Chet have just had their individual time. So yeah, for him not to even just be like bummed out himself and more so just worried about Shawn as if it was a separate individual that he had no contact with is weird.
Chet asked Alan one thing on his deathbed: take care of my boys. Where is Alan?
Right.
Don't get me wrong, he's about to have a newborn.
Yeah.
So I just feel like we could have made time for Alan being there.
Or Mr. Feeney.
In the background. Yeah, or Feeney. Like these people who have been in Shawn's life, who know Shawn, and all of them know Chet. Each and every one of them.
Incredible opportunity to have Turner show up. What an awesome time to have Turner show up and just be like, you know, I know it's been a long time. I heard about your dad. I wanted to come here and be with you. Like, oh my gosh.
And all the whole I feel like I have nothing conversation can be had with Turner.
Yeah.
You know, like have him be that, or Feeney, or Alan, or Jack's stepdad.
Yeah.
You know, like
Turner would have
Ving Rhames.
Ving Rhames, yes.
Yeah, or Ving Rhames.
It would have been Amy would have been a great, like, yes, there's all these male figures, but like having the only mom figure really that you know, like I just felt like as a mom and her thinking of Shawn as like her other son, she would have been like a helicopter. Like
she would have been bringing him food. She would have been like doing things for him 100%.
Even pregnant, she would be there. So it's weird that they had them be all alone. I feel like having the extras just in the background, picking things up, helping sort through, and you still get all of these deep, heartfelt moments between Shawn and whoever. But like, it just doesn't make sense that he is this alone.
Sure.
And that would have helped, like, begin his grieving and processing process to have all of those people there to show him that he does have a support system and he can reach out to anyone at any time and they're there for him and will take care of him as he navigates this new journey without Chet.
It also would have added weight to his whole saying goodbye at the end. Like if everyone's there for you and it's very clear, like what they try to do is they have Shawn is clearly pushing people away. That's why he says what he says to Jack in the dorm room. So Shawn is pushing people away. So to have everyone be there for him and actually help clean out the trailer and bringing him food, and Angela being like, hey, I'll give you space, but I just wanted to be here for you. All of those things. And then having Shawn be like, hey, I just really want to tell Topanga goodbye, would have been like, oh, you know, like that's where you're like,
show him getting overwhelmed with the sympathy, the attention of it. Like, as much as he appreciates people's kindness, they're constantly reminding him of the worst moment of his life. So like having him kind of deal with that would have been interesting.
100%. I feel like New Girl did a really good job of kind of handling a similar situation and having a parallel of the dads just being very similar of being F-ups, essentially.
Sure.
When Nick's dad died and they showed Winston, because Winston is like his Shawn, essentially, because he grew up with him. You see Winston kind of having his own grieving process. It's silly, but he's remembering all the fun that he got to have with, you know, gosh, what's his name? Nick's dad.
Yeah.
So like
he emotionally meets Nick where he's at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
it could have been silly, but still, yeah.
Chet is a presence. Chet, like the story of Chet like hustling at the college, like that is something that Cory or Eric or, you know, like where's this moment of like everyone just kind of sitting around telling stories about Chet? Like Chet is a character. There are some unbelievable, crazy stories. So to kind of have a moment where everyone's at the trailer helping pick up, they're telling stories about Chet. Jack's getting able to hear all these stories that he doesn't have any, like he doesn't have his own Chet story, and that makes him sad.
Do you think there should have been a funeral scene or a wake scene to kind of show that?
I don't feel like you have to have that. I feel like we could have done all of this in the trailer.
Yeah.
And remove the prayer at the end of Cory's thing. Give us 2 seconds or 2 lines of other characters being there. And again, you would still be able to have Jack be like, oh, I don't have my own Chet story. And that being his breaking point. And Shawn being like, everyone being here for me is overwhelming because I'm an orphan, essentially. And I need to start dealing with life as an orphan.
He does get into that a little bit later on in the season.
Yeah, I'm just like, I feel like this would have been a great opportunity for it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anything else from anyone? Like, I feel like we've gone so long, but this is really a lot going on in this.
Yeah.
I just want to quickly point out, we didn't get to talk about it. Eric does a fantastic Feeney call in the student union. He also has some fun where he's like, come on, Feeney, get to step in. This dude can totally read. He's just having a lot of fun with Bill Daniels, and I love their chemistry. We also just didn't really talk about it, and I just want to quickly point out that, like, Cory's reaction to Topanga being like, oh, this isn't about sex, this is us getting to know each other. As funny as I think the visual gag of him sliding on the bed is, and I actually think that might have been a mistake, that he wasn't supposed to go as fast as he did. Like, it feels like a blooper that they just kept in because of Danielle's reaction. I could be wrong. It just, to me, we keep going back to this whole idea that Cory is telling Topanga essentially that you owe me sex because of our relationship. And so I just think that's one of those things we keep seeing throughout the series and the season, but I just want to point it out.
Yeah.
I hated the silk robe scene. Like, nothing about it was funny to me. Not like, even like the psych act, I just couldn't get over the fact that he was like yelling at Topanga for not having sex with him. She was like, this is not about sex. And he's like, you're wrong. And it's just like this isn't funny. You are pressuring your fiance to have sex with you, and it's like it's something that you're owed. And I couldn't laugh at that scene.
He said his outfit cost $2,000. Where does Cory get this money from?
Why are you you have a wedding coming up, bro? Like, why are you spending money on pajamas? What's up?
And you remember, like, when they end up getting married and living together, that they don't have any money.
They spent all that money on some pajamas.
On pajamas.
And didn't even buy her any. Talk about selfish. Like, he didn't get his and hers. He got his.
Did he really think that those pajamas were going to get her to be turned on?
Everyone knows that slippery pajamas is the way to get it on.
I'm not going to lie. TLC's creep.
Oh my God.
It's one of the sexiest things that I just feel like it's fantastic.
But Cory is not in that level.
Cory is not Lisa Left Eye Lopez.
He's not. But had he done, I'm telling you right now, I want a scene of Ben Savage going, like, and like the wind blowing. He has like the silk pajamas blowing in the wind. That would have been a great gag, and I would have loved it.
Well, apparently all the boys would do a Backstreet Boys song before the live taping, and Ben would like rip his shirt open and like do a whole thing. So
where's that? Give me that kind of comedy. And again, make it less focused on sex and more of him just like being excited, like they can both wear their pajamas and whatever. I don't know.
I just want to quickly say that this kind of reminded me of another storyline they did. It was season 4, episode 8, Danger Street. It's the one where Shawn's seeing the girl who's getting abused by her dad. Anyways, the episode, Cory thinks that Shawn is having sex with this girl, so Cory's like, oh, I'm gonna put the moves on Topanga. So he invites Topanga over. He has like grapes on the bed. He has like the speaker, and she's like, bro, I'm not into this. This scene felt like a far more manic version of that. It just felt like that scene dialed up to an 11. So it's one of those things where it's like, I get that they're trying to have fun, but they're also like kind of running out of stories here. So it's just interesting to start seeing them to kind of repeat different elements.
And I don't know why Cory's lying to himself. He is like a Grandpa Joe nightgown with a nightcap type jammy situation.
I would have loved to see that. Oh my God.
And Topanga could have been rocking a very stylish muumuu. I'm just saying.
100%.
Again, like it's very interesting to me that there are moments where it's just like, where's Granola? I grew up with Jedediah Topanga at. Like, I would have like loved some part of like, him being like, that mask smells, and she's like, it's all natural, and like like this whole thing where it's like they show her making the mask, and like that makes sense, and he's like, it's like the room smell or whatever. It just would have been a great opportunity to remind everyone where Topanga comes from.
Right. I was really upset that like she didn't have the ability in college to kind of like be the activist. Like they really changed her character from where she started of just being on her own beaten path, you know. And I think she could have still did that and still had a relationship with Cory, like being at the student union saying I gotta go protest or something. Like that could have been like a whole character arc for her. I mean, if Summer from the OC could have that arc,
yes. Oh my gosh,
so
season 4 Summer. Yes, good call out.
Or like to your point, like have, I don't know if it would be like the right, but have like Topanga put up like a Pussy Riot poster in their bedroom.
Yeah.
You know, like something where it's like, oh, again, she's bringing her stuff over here. When we said moving in together, it didn't dawn on me that you would have stuff to bring. Like again, we can go back to like the incense that she would be doing, or something where it's like
yoga.
Hey, Topanga,
her nighttime yoga routine or something.
Or her meditating or something like that, you know.
Like, no, guys, she's teen beat Topanga now. Like, you have to understand, once they realized that, oh, we could just use her to sell magazines and things like that, they stripped all the cool weirdness away from her and made her just this, like, object of desire, the perfect girlfriend. That's why every 90s kid was like, oh, Topanga was one of my crushes, because they wrote her to be that.
She was manufactured that way.
Yeah,
she was.
Okay, I do want to like move this along and ask, do you guys have a bruh moment of this episode?
No, the only comment I came away from was Danielle Fishel has fantastic hair.
Amazing
Always.
hair. Did you guys see that she's on QVC right now selling hair care products? She was born for this. She was born for it.
For me, it's definitely, I would say it's the make out scene at the end. Like I feel like we had a solid episode and then it was just like, wait, why?
Yeah.
Why is this happening? I don't know. That was like, I don't know. That was mine.
My bruh moment was Rachel being like, how'd you know I do that thing in the shower?
That was mine. That was
What?
mine. And he was like, don't worry about it. And I was like, no, I feel like we should worry about it.
Yeah.
We've already had issues with you recording me without my consent, so we should revisit this right away.
Okay, do you guys have a Feeny lesson? What do you think the Feeny lesson of this episode is?
Well, it definitely has to come from either Jack and Shawn. The fact that Shawn came back and apologized for like how quickly he was kind of snipping at Jack and their family, like that they have more that ties them, and him apologizing and saying like, I felt this way because I just don't feel like I'm connected to anybody. Like I thought that was a really good moment, and I could see like him having again, like we talked, a conversation with Feeny to get him to that moment. So I feel like that's probably a good example. I don't know.
I think just the thing that comes after someone passes away, like especially from a young age, understanding like now they have to go and clean out their dad's stuff. He has all these past due bills. It's like stuff that no one really talks to you about when you're younger, that there's all these implications. It's not just the grieving part of it. There's like actual work that has to be done while you're still grieving, while you're trying to maintain relationships with other people that may not be grieving in the same way that you are, and trying to balance all that out. Plus they're still in college, like trying to go to class and stuff, I'm assuming. So it's just showing that it was a very real episode, in that even though Chet is gone, there's still a lot of work to be done, and you're going to be reminded a lot of him moving forward.
Sure. My Feeny lesson, I think, is just that The importance of active communication. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Cory and Topanga, they didn't know each other because they weren't really talking, asking the questions that they need to know. Jack and Shawn weren't communicating to understand each other's perspective and their individual grieving processes. And, you know, we didn't really talk about it, but there is this whole kind of part of the story where Eric's like, oh, me and Rachel are going to hook up, and I'm concerned about Jack, how he's going to take it. So, like, not having that communication with Jack and then seeing how that ended up just kind of shows that there just needed to be just more communication between all of the characters.
Yeah, and communication with Rachel. Hey, do you actually want to be with me?
Yes.
Check yes, check no.
Are you just using this relationship because you're still upset about your ex that you keep mentioning? Like, am I a rebound? Like, let's get into it.
Right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, mine is very similar to yours, T, where it was just like you never really know another person. I feel like that's kind of like the thing, is like you never really know a person, so you have to put in the work, and the work being communication, asking these questions, getting to know each other. And I feel like all around every single character like learned more as they asked. Except Cory, of course, who didn't ask any questions and just decided to go on this road trip. All right, finally, what grades are you guys giving this?
I'm gonna say a B-, because I think that it was, for the time period and for the show, they really did dive into very serious issues. And they didn't just like had Chet die in the last episode and just leave it. They really continued to bring it through, which for sitcom, rare. And I think we all highlighted quite a few things that were missing, but it still was, I think, a very good episode for the show.
I wish I could give separate grades for the two storylines, because
Do it.
well, okay. So the Jack and Shawn storyline, I would give either a B+ or an A. Like, I think it showed grief and like what happens after someone passes away in a very real way. For the Cory Topanga storyline, man, like a C-, maybe even a D+. Like, it was bad. All it did was highlight that they don't communicate. Cory doesn't listen, and he's not willing to like take on any of Topanga's like routines or anything. It's very one-sided, and Topanga's putting in all that work. And I don't.
This is the first I'm hearing about their relationship being one-sided. I'm shocked.
He's gonna pray about it. That's
I'm
his
gonna pray
solution.
on it. I'm gonna pray on it. Thoughts and prayers. That's Cory. Thoughts and prayers.
Where are you at?
Yeah, you know, like I said, up until the last like 5 minutes, I thought this was my favorite Jack Hunter episode. I'm gonna give it a B+. Sure.
All right. I'm going to, like, it was really hard. I was going between C+ and B- for all the reasons that everyone said. It was like, it feels like there's so much good potential here, but I also feel like we've just kind of like tore it down for like what it also could have been. So I feel like I'm going to give it a B-, just on the sense of, I do feel like we bring up really great topics. I feel like it's acted really well from everybody, and I'm just going to take the episode for what it is and not what it could have been.
Sure.
Okay, now we have our homework. We're so excited. Both Jackie and Danielle, tell our listeners both where they can find you, but then also if you have any homework of the week.
Yeah, what are you guys watching these days? Like, what are you excited about?
Well, I'll start where everyone can find us. So Jackie and I, like we said, we host a 90s and 2000s movie podcast. It's called No More Late Fees, because we used to work at Blockbuster. And you can find us on pretty much every social platform: YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at No More Late Fees. We just watched The Notebook.
Amazing.
Not one of
so many
Jackie's
thoughts. So many thoughts.
I have not rewatched that movie since like 2003. I would love to rewatch it.
Thank you so much. I hate it too, and I was on with two people that liked it. And
it was such a moment when it came out.
It is one of those movies to where I had to deal with so many straight guys be like, The Notebook is like the best love movie. And then I watched it and I was like, what are all of you talking about? Crazy.
Yes, there are. We talked about there are some things that like not great, not great. But I did cry at the end, which I was surprised that I would cry again. After all these years, I thought I was gonna rip it quite more than but it was still, to me, pretty solid quality movie. Acting, the set design, everything like was beautiful. Storyline, there I had some questions, and I definitely pointed out the slave quarters at the various plantations.
Oh
We
my
did get
God.
into that. So there's some stuff. It is a Nicholas Sparks book turned into a movie, so I didn't have that much expectation. But is it the best love story of all time? No, it is not.
What would you guys recommend instead?
Oh gosh, we talked about this too. I love the movie Amelie a lot.
Love that movie. Love that
it,
movie.
Jackie?
My recommendation was P.S. I Love You. Like,
Ooh.
there are very few like melodramas that are more drama than comedy in romance that I like, but that's one of them. And then I just have my like set rom-coms that I love. One of which being The Wedding Date, which we'll get to do soon.
Do you have any homework, Sage?
Oh yeah. Oh, so actually, if we're gonna talk about homework and all of like the messiness, I have been watching Riches on Amazon Prime. And TC, I need you to watch this.
I have not seen
the nighttime soap that you've always been waiting for. And like I chose it for this episode because the entire thing is about a father who dies and leaves his hair care company in London to his children, to all of his children. And some of them are from his second marriage who they live in London. And the company itself is left to his two oldest children from his first marriage. So it's a lot of sibling dynamics, grief, with like losing a father that you've never really known. Like it's just a lot of commonality. So I was really a lot of commonality. So I was really excited to bring it for this episode, but also it's just a really good series.
And it's only 8 episodes, and it's like it's the Black like parallel to the TV show Succession, essentially. Except the dad dies.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really good, and I think you'll really enjoy the characters. There's a lot of just really good back and forth, and like some and again, it's set in London, so it's like seeing the Black scene there. It's actually really good, just about like inheritance and all this other stuff. I think you guys should check it out. TC, I think you'll love it.
All right, I'll have to see. Have to check it out.
What's your homework?
I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to just throw out there for homework. I just saw Woman King. I know you recommended this before. I just rented it because I'm in like the Oscar season and I'm trying to like catch up on all these like performances that people are getting awards for and everything. And I saw Woman King and I just thought it was a dope movie. I just thought they did a great job. I had never seen Black women like that in cinema before. I had never seen Africa like kind of portrayed like that in terms of the way they did tribes and everything. And I just thought that Viola Davis is just like such a force of nature in that film, and there's so many other great performances. That just Letitia Lynch, who I just saw in Matilda, like singing and being Miss Honey, and then I saw her in this movie being like a fucking warrior. I was just like, damn, what can't you do? So, Woman King, I'll throw it out there.
Okay, thank you guys so much for joining us. We really, really enjoyed the conversation that we had with you guys. I'm going to plug myself and beg to be on at some point in time.
Please have us on. Please, we would love to.
I already have a movie
have
in
to beg.
Sugar and Spice. Have you guys done that?
No,
you've been begging me to see this movie for years.
See it, and I just love it. It's like one of those awesomely bad movies. It's 2001. I made sure I was like, does this fit? Yes, it does. So anyway,
Jackie's adding into the list.
I'm trying to find the list. Any other?
Any other
movies? You have one?
Me and Siege have I think we've had conversations about this before, but definitely revisit Josie and the Pussycats if you haven't already.
You know what?
That
Honestly,
movie
that's
strangely holds up.
that one and Spice World has to be the two most requested movies I feel like we get a lot.
I have seen Spice World more times than I feel comfortable saying out loud. I hate and love that movie at the same time. It's amazing.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. Again, check out No More Late Fees at all of the places. And then you guys can check us out at Bro Meets World at all of the places for podcasting. You can leave us a voice message. I think we actually have like a few messages, so we're gonna have to like do like a mailbag section at some point in time.
Yeah.
But thank you guys so much. Continue to give us 5-star ratings. We appreciate it. And is there anything else, T?
I don't think so. I think we just need to remind everyone to dream,
to try.
Oh, but this is where we're supposed to remember.
Sorry.
It's fine. Do good.
Okay, we'll be
again.
good.
It's fine. No. It's right. From the top. Let's do this.
I think it's time we remind everyone to dream,
to try,
and to do good.
Yay! Thank you guys so much. Later, bruh.
Later, bruh.
When this boy meets world.